Thank you for joining us live with Miami's Community News. And today we have two wonderful guests, Dr. Isik Unlu, and you are a operations manager for Miami-Dade County Mosquito Control. And we have a biologist, Johana Medina, with the Miami-Dade County Mosquito Control Department. And we're going to be talking about mosquitoes. Before we get on to that, this is the end of the Women's History Month. One of the things that people have been able to do, certainly in the last 20 years, is help people become what they can be. And that each of us in our own right are an example for somebody that is half our age, and for people that are twice our age. And Joanne, let's talk about you. Where did you go to school, and why did you pick the field you're in and to work for Miami-Dade County?
Hi everyone. Good morning, Michael. I'm originally from Colombia, South America. I studied biology over there, and then I moved to the United States. I went to Florida International University. I studied biology, and actually, I started in Miami-Dade County as a biologist during the Zika outbreak. We were in the middle of the outbreak when I was hired as a temporary biologist. So that's how I ended up. And then I was um, I was hired as a permanent biologist.
That's wonderful. Tell us about where you went to school and how you wound up down here. You have quite an extensive career so far, and you have plenty more to go. But tell us about why you went into this field and why you came to Miami.
Well, I was quite sure I want to be a biologist when I was in high school. So I had a great mentor. She was very successful and a great teacher. And my thing started like, I want to be like her. So she was my role model. And actually, I ended up going at the same university, the same department, lectured by same, not exactly same, but same professors. And it just gave me the thrill when I, walk into the building. I'm like, I made it. I'm where exactly she was like 20 years ago. And so I knew what I wanted to do because she was a great example.
So you had a strong connection to her and to the field.
Correct.
So there you are. You walk in and you go, I've arrived.
Yes, that was exactly.
And even today, years later, right, you're still feeling it. You can see your passion with that.
Oh, yeah.
And we know for both of you, there's some little girl, maybe a little boy that's out there. I want to go do that. And you never know when that's going to come to fruition and who they are, because lots of times we don't know, right? So one of the things I try to do, if there's people in my life that have provided leadership, I like to tell them, because maybe nobody told them recently. So I'm going to get on to the Women's History Month, which was, according to what I was able to find, it was really President Jimmy Carter that brought it to fruition. There are many people, but in 1980, but in 1995, each of the presidents issued an annual proclamation designating March as Women's History Month. And each year there's a different theme about the push. And interesting enough that this theme for this year had to do, I know I have it here somewhere, right? The 2022 Women's History theme, providing healing, promoting, and hope, is both a tribute to the ceaseless effort of caregivers and frontline workers during this ongoing pandemic, and also recognition of the thousands of ways that women of all cultures have provided healing and hope throughout history. So people, when we look at the two of you, that we know the things you're doing is you're helping people long before they even know that they need it.
Yeah.
Because to the novice, the mosquito's a bother, right? And not anything more than that. But in fact, it can be quite serious. So tell us about that, Doctor, about mosquitoes and the serious complications that can come from mosquito bites.
Well, in Miami-Dade County, we would like to do things proactively, like you just mentioned. We don't want people to get sick to do something and be reactive to it. So we do a lot of larviciding, meaning that we target the mosquitoes when they're still in their aquatic stage. They're not winged adults to transmit disease. So that's where we start and where we want to control them first. so we don't need to deal with any disease or high number of adults or anything like that. So that's the main focus we have in the county for control point of view. And it's always serious and a sad point of view, but I always quote that we don't want to use people as sentinels. We don't want them to get sick and like, oh, people are getting sick, let's go control mosquitoes. It's already too late. We want to control and manage mosquitoes before we get to that point. That's our goal.
And Johana, tell us about your daily activities. What does it look like during? And we know this is, I don't want to use the term off season because it's cooler, because we know it's not off season because it's all the time. But tell us about things you do on a regular basis.
I'm part of the surveillance section. We are two biologists. I'm one of them. And basically, I'm in charge of the laboratory technicians. We have 5 laboratory technicians. They are in charge of doing all the identification of adult mosquitoes and larvae mosquitoes. We have around 300 mosquito traps, more than 300 mosquito traps in the county. We set them up every single week, and we do all the identification, keep all the data. We do all the insecticide resistance test. We collect larvae and eggs, and we send it for testing. We also collect adult mosquitoes and send them for testing. So basically, we are overseeing all that is the data and all the identification of the mosquitoes.
So, doctor, you mentioned that there's many different types of mosquitoes. For the average person, we might know 2 or 3, maybe, but for the most part, not paying much attention to it. So more or less in Miami-Dade County, how many different types and subspecies are there?
Well, we have over 50, but her team keep finding new species, so the numbers are growing. But if we say over 50 species in Miami, it will be safe to say, right, Johana?
So when you look at it, when you look at a mosquito, you can tell right off the bat what it is.
Yes. Because usually we keep getting the same species over and over. From time to time, we got different species, and we are keep getting different species. But yes, we can distinguish them.
So let's talk about right now. This is almost April's coming up. All right, what can somebody do today so they can limit their exposure to mosquitoes? And is there some preventative things they can do as we get towards the rainy season?
You want to start, Johana?
Yes, if I can jump in, I just will say try to drain and cover. I think that will be the main thing. If you have any kind of water in your containers, in your balcony, in your patio, just try to get rid of them and not to keep all these water containers.
So when it does start to rain a lot, all right, that it just naturally starts to collect. So, and I've been in plenty of nurseries where that ground between the rain and the sprinkler system, it's always wet, and that's a place where mosquitoes grow a lot.
Yeah, that's the right chemistry. We don't want standing water. You need to break the cycle because it takes, with our temperatures in the summer, from 5 to 7 days from egg to adult, which is if you think about it, it's a very quick life cycle. And the only time you can break the cycle is if you disturb the water, which means you tip them over and the water goes away. And if it collects again and you tip them over again, you're fine. Or, if you get any products from the residents can buy and put it in items like bird baths, because we can't tip them over. So the water is going to sit there usually more than 7 days. So if you treat them or, put a little bit of bleach in it to make the, mosquitoes uncomfortable and not survive, that would help you with certain type of mosquitoes not bothering you.
And how long does a mosquito live?
It depends on the temperature. It's funny that we always think they like lots of heat, but they have a sweet spot, right? They don't want too cold. They don't want too hot, because it's the same effect. If it gets too hot, they die because they're very delicate. very delicate organisms. That, if it's too hot, then they dry out and they die.
Do they live a month?
Give or take, if it's a healthy conditions, I would say
Yes.
they would, and if it's a female, if it's a
Women
female,
always live long.
Yes.
if it's a male, I wouldn't give them a month. It would take much less.
So female, how many eggs might they lay? And out of all the ones they lay, what percentage become live babies? More or less.
Well, it depends on the species
Mhm.
because, for example, for Aedes aegypti, which is a vector for Zika, dengue, chikungunya, they use something that is called skip oviposition. So usually they lay eggs in different places, and usually it's a couple of them, but they just put it in different places.
Mhm.
In the case of the Culex rafts, Culex mosquitoes, they lay their eggs on rafts, and usually these rafts they can contain maybe 300.
Yeah, somewhere between 200 to 300, based on how well they nourished.
Nurse,
Yeah.
suck blood out of you.
Yes.
You're so discreet, doctor. All right. And so, how often do they lay eggs
Well,
in their month or so life, more or less?
I would say 2. Do you think that 2? I
Yes.
mean, if one for sure for
One for
most of
sure.
them,
Mhm.
but they can go and take another blood meal and lay another
It's
set
called
of
the blood
eggs.
meal.
Blood meal.
So, what critters do mosquitoes get their food from besides human beings?
Frogs. You can name anything. Frogs. During my PhD, I found that they're getting blood meal from alligators, which was very surprising. I'm like,
And stuff. Where do they go?
"Whoa."
Right in there.
Yeah, they go around the eyes, and they go also for the babies before their skin is really hardened. Anything, birds, frogs, and
Dogs, cats.
what was the study by
Bilateral ribs,
Yes.
Dude.
No, not Larry. Yeah. He's
reptiles,
Yeah. No, the
and the worms.
the worms. Yeah, that was
Earthworms.
like
So,
Yes.
what?
and from the raccoons that are out there, the foxes, the cats, dogs, squirrels, all those animals.
Now we
that are
know
out
even the worms.
Yes.
there. That is amazing.
Yes.
So they're born, they go get some blood because that's what they live on. All right?
Mhm.
And then the purpose of that blood is not just to live on, but to do what?
They need the blood for eggs.
Correct.
Because they need a lot of protein for their eggs, and that's where they get the protein. Because if they're not laying eggs, the females, they also go to the plants and take nectar and use the energy to fly and do whatever they're doing from the nectars. But when it's time to lay their eggs, that's when they need the blood to nourish. Again, I'm going to use the
It's
word nourish.
It
the
is an amazing
babies.
process
Yeah.
to see that happen.
Mhm.
So let's talk about how we can protect our bodies and our children against getting bitten. What should we do?
Well, there's really not many things you can do. There are so many things like, clothings that are treated with pesticides, and, they have bracelets. And I had a chance to, test a couple of them, just like, Michael here was putting his hand in a cage of mosquitoes.
That was pretty neat. We have it up on our wall. Put his hand in. His hand turned black, folks. All right?
Yeah.
Right? And it was a white hand when he put it in. All right. Just mosquitoes completely covered it.
So when I put the bracelet on, they didn't care that I was wearing the bracelet. When I put the protective treated shirt, they were a little bit more shy. But when they were really repelled, when I started, treating my arm with repellents, CDC recommended repellents. So
when we see the yardmen out there with their hats and their outdoor clothing,
Mhm.
that's to protect them against a lot of things, right? Sunlight, right?
Yeah.
And all the other critters that are floating
Mhm.
around.
True.
Right.
Mhm.
When I go into our bushes, which I try not to do anymore, I am completely covered because I never know as I'm in there what's coming my way. All right.
Mhm.
And I'm sure there are there are very few mosquitoes, but a lot of other stuff
Yeah.
that's there. So tell us about mosquitoes that lay their eggs and that they can be fertile for a long period of time, and what activates them.
Um,
There's one species or two.
no, their biology is, for reproduction is pretty similar. They may make different, mating clouds and stuff based on the different species, but as soon as they emerge as a female, males emerge earlier than them, and they're around.
But they die earlier.
Yeah, because as soon as the female emerges, most of them mates, and then the purpose of males being is
We
done.
understand.
So that's when the females feed on nectar, and then they start looking for hosts to find the blood meal. And it depends on the species again.
Yeah.
Like Johana said, it may just happen right away for some species. Some species also they don't need the first blood meal. They can just go and lay their eggs, and then when they need to lay the second set of eggs, that's when they need the blood meal.
Are some eggs activated by when they get wet?
Yes, for example, for the culex, the ruffs they are laid on water.
Mhm.
In the case of the Aedes aegypti and the Aedes, they lay their eggs above the water line. So one of the hypotheses is that once they reach the water level, they can be hatched.
So that mean in lakes where it doesn't really go up and down a lot. So they lay it near the water, but not in the water.
Mhm.
And when you say near, tell me about it. Is that a foot away? Is it on the weeds before it, or is it just higher?
I don't know.
Again, just depends on what
Depends,
species
yes.
that you're dealing with. But I think a rule of thumb to say, you usually don't find any mosquito activity in the middle of a lake or canal. It has to be some,
the edges.
Sort of still.
still patch
Yes.
of water, not too deep, not moving too much.
So there's some outdoor fish farms that have concrete tanks, right? And the water's running around in there. By virtue that it's running around, does that keep the eggs from being laid?
Yeah, that's definitely a disturbance.
Yes.
Because
they
when the
don't like
mosquito
that.
goes, they go, they're not going to work
No,
there.
No.
they don't like
That's
that.
how
No.
they survived a
Mm.
couple million years.
Yeah,
Yes.
the usually is we have ponds in communities. We ask them to put sprinkler or some kind of running water system, so this way the mosquitoes wouldn't bother laying their eggs there.
So years ago, the Supreme Court had Sandra Day O'Connell, who became the first woman Supreme Court justice. And people said at that time that there'll be a little bit different perspective on how she looks at things, right? So tell us, in your role as leading women in Miami-Dade County, what's that like with that responsibility? Know that you look at it a little bit differently than a man would from his side. And what does that mean to you?
That's a very difficult question. I think first of all, I think it's not men and women. Everybody is different. But I think I would say my challenge and advantage, because it's sometimes challenging and overwhelming, but sometimes it's an advantage, that, I'm a bit emotional. And when I see that, maybe cloud my judgment, then I'll find someone, and, it's a male colleague, and I'm like, okay, this is how I'm looking at this. Do you think I'm just looking at this very emotionally, because they're more, straightforward, more logical when they look at the situations, less emotions, if that makes sense. So if I really like to balance it, because when I first started, I think I was more emotional. It comes with the experience to balance it and get advantage of looking at the situation in a way that, I put myself in other people's shoes and see how they feel. I think being a mother also, affects your decisions. If somebody's child is sick, instead of like, oh, the work is not going to get done, you know how it is, and you have the empathy to see how things are going. And I think it's a lot of experience, and looking at things in a way that is fair for you, for everybody.
What's your take?
For me, I would say that maybe women are a little bit like looking ahead, and I'm the kind of person that I'm always like maybe thinking what could get wrong, so I'm trying to prevent those things. So I would say that is for me. Like we look into like a little bit more into the future, or maybe the circumstances that we can face, or just try to avoid and not try to get to that point if maybe it can be prevented. So
And
that's
definitely multitasking.
And
We do lots of
and
multitasking.
I'd tell you, I believe that it's okay to say, if you have a person from this part of the country, somebody from another part, and you have a woman and a man, a young person, an old person, the perspectives that we
It's
each have is a little different. And thank
Mhm.
goodness for that. Otherwise,
Mhm.
we'd all be the same, thinking the same things.
Mhm.
And it's been long known that women tend to care a little bit more. All right. And it's just in my age group, it's just generally accepted that it's more apt to be that. And that's why, 95% of nurses are women. All right.
Mhm.
And it's like, because I'm going to go be a fireman. Right?
Yeah.
I'm going to climb that mountain. Right?
Mhm. Mhm.
And so, and it's okay to acknowledge that. And so let's talk about some of the common misperceptions that people have about mosquitoes. Mine is, oh, well, it's just going to bite and it's going to hurt and it'll be okay. All right.
Mhm.
So what are some of the misperceptions that people have about mosquitoes?
that the males bite. Actually, males, they don't bite. The only ones that bite are the females, because they are looking for this blood and for the protein to lay their eggs. So that is one misconception.
And what's
Usually, what I get as a question is, "Oh, the mosquitoes loves me. It's because of my blood type, isn't it?" Well, there are scientific studies to test if they prefer a certain blood type, but there's no evidence showing that they like one over another one. So that's one misconception. It doesn't matter if we're A, B, or Z.
okay? And what about smells that we each have?
Mhm.
Tell us about that. What is there? People say I'm wearing cologne, it attracts them, or perfume, or not wearing it.
No, I will say that it's when you're sweating that you are producing this lactic acid and all this chemistry. Mosquitoes will be more attracted to those kind of chemicals, but not because you are wearing these colognes and these lotions and all of that. It is more into your chemistry, your body chemistry, and the lactic acid and those chemicals that your body is secreting, basically.
So if you're out on a canoe, out and wherever it is, and there's mosquitoes all over, I can't say, hey, they love me because of my smell. All right, because for the most part, you're going to get covered up.
Could be though. I mean, it is some, because the way you smell, like when we're not using any cologne or anything, it's just us ourselves. You smell different. I smell different, and
Yes.
there's something going on there, definitely.
Well, my 8-year-old grandson made me smell his armpit the other day. Grandpa, come here. I want you to smell.
Yeah, I mean, as growing up, that was the joke in the family. Mom was like, "Oh yeah, even mosquitoes don't go for your father," And I see them; they're sitting next to each other, and they're, eating up my mom alive. And you don't see, maybe merely a one laying on my, getting on my dad. And I had the same thing. That became a joke when I was in Jersey, and my one of my inspectors, he would be covered, his face, his neck, and I'm like, I think out of respect, they know I'm the supervisor for the mosquito control. They don't bother with me. So there's definitely, your chemistry has something to do with it, like body temperature to do, because it's a combination of few things: your body temperature, your how you smell, and and if you're moving around so much, so the mosquito puts all those cues to find you. It's not one thing in the CO2. That's another joke, women talk so much, the mosquitoes get attracted to them.
Yeah.
So but it's a bunch of cues that mosquito collects to find you, because they don't really see you. They need to put a few things together to see you.
So we've just experienced 2.25 years of COVID. How did that affect the mosquito control operations, Joanna?
Well, for the surveillance section, there were many places that were closed that actually we didn't have access to set up the traps and continue with the monitoring of those locations. So I would say that was the biggest impact for us.
Okay, let's talk about little girls and STEM programs, which is for science, technology, engineering, and math, right?
Mm-hmm.
The two of you must be really brilliant in those arenas, not like the rest of us in the room over here. And so tell us about careers that young people can have in those fields.
Well, I think, there's no limit to, anyone. I think it's in your head that you put those limits.
Talk right in the camera and tell that 16-year-old girl that.
Okay. Don't see as a limit or anything, sky is your limit. You can do whatever you want, however you want it. I never see as or intimidated. Oh, there's so many, men in mosquito control, because now I see a lot of females. What I'm seeing is right now is, even though we're getting more females in the mosquito control, there are not enough or many who's in charge. And but I think that's gonna get better too. And I know I'm hoping that.
Are you listening?
I'm hoping Johana and I will set a good example and inspire 16 years old girls out there.
Thank you for that, Dr. Joanna.
Actually, I have
Right there. Yeah.
all in my team. All of us, we are women. So actually, all of them, they have been in the field of science. So we have 5 laboratory techs and me. So I think that can demonstrate that women are interested in science and people are willing to learn. And it depends on you, and it's all on your mind if you are if you wanna do it.
Thank you for that. We understand about ourselves that there's a default mechanism that we have. We try this and then it go back to here. If I just, it goes back to here. One day, a couple of years ago, I invited some friends to breakfast, and I would go to this restaurant every Tuesday, and I would invite people. At one point, 40 people showed up. And then, I think she was mayor then, Mayor Cava showed up, and she said to me, Michael, there's approximately 40 people here, and 37 of them are men. And I apologized so profusely. That was not by design, it was by default. There's just those are my buds. And I make a policy, I'm not going to lunch with women, and I just don't do that. And I realized that was my posse. And so we went out of our way to make sure, because it's hard to say, okay, stop this and go do this. 6 months later, she showed up at one of our events, and Wilbur Bell, who happens to be African-American, got up on stage, and he said, I was in the Coast Guard, and there was somebody from everywhere in the world, as there is in this audience. All right. It was a proud moment for us that we were able to get out of our head and start thinking to be inclusive. So I hope that you all are included in the operations on the level you're at and wherever you want to go with that, because there are people that are watching you and hoping that you achieve that. Again, Doctor, thank you very much for being here.
My
Joanna,
pleasure.
thank you very much.
Michael.
And we're gonna call it a day. And Leon, thank you so much for being here and for doing the show. And we're gonna wrap it up. Say goodbye, everybody. See ya.
Bye.
Bye.